February 24th, 2005, 38-year-old Rosemary Essa was out for a movie in Cleveland, Ohio, when she was involved in a minor low-speed accident. What happened next would change her life forever. When emergency services arrived, they discovered her traumatized but vomiting profusely, which puzzled them beyond their senses because this wasn't normal. She was soon rushed to the hospital, where doctors proclaimed her dead. But what happened next would reveal the most unusual and disturbing story that could possibly happen to a 38-year-old, lovely housewife. On the morning of February 24, 2005, Rosie, her husband Yazid Essa, and their two small children awoke to begin their day. Yazid had the day off, which provided him the opportunity to play with and care for the children, enabling Rosie to concentrate on her goals without any concerns. Rosie had planned to go to the cinema with her sister to watch a movie and spend some quality time together. But as the morning progressed, her errands and duties piled up, making her run late. Rosie immediately got ready, raced out the front door, and jumped into her car, driving to the movie at 1:53 p.m. While driving, Rosie called a buddy for a casual chat. What began as a normal conversation took a dark and unexpected turn in the middle of their conversation, signaling the start of a terrible and unexplained chain of events that would change everything. She called her friend Ava and said, "I feel like crap, I just feel horrible." She continued talking about how she felt, but then she passed out. Rosie was driving much more slowly than usual in her Volvo SUV as she headed down Wilson Mills Road toward the movie theater. Usually it was only a 10-minute drive from her house to the theater, but as she got closer, something seemed off. Her driving became erratic, and she started veering all over the road. Suddenly her car crashed into another vehicle, but she kept veering until her car slowly lost speed and finally stopped. This was completely out of character for Rosie. As a medical professional drove by, she saw Rosie's car parked awkwardly on the road. She quickly pulled over and ran to check on the driver. When she got to the car, she saw Rosie slumped in the driver's seat, vomiting uncontrollably all over herself and the doors. Rosie's eyes were wide open, and she was struggling to breathe. Realizing how serious the situation was, the practitioner tried to help, but it was clear that Rosie needed immediate medical attention. Concerned bystanders gathered, trying to figure out what was going on and how they could help. The practitioner called 911 to report the accident. After a while, the police and paramedics arrived and rushed Rosie to Hillcrest Hospital. While the paramedics were taking care of Rosie, the police stayed at the scene of the accident, trying to figure out what had happened. They examined the car and the scene, searching for clues, because it didn't look like a normal car accident. Rosie was in very bad shape. Her car was moving at a normal speed, and it didn't make sense that the car looked fine while Rosie was in such critical condition. When she arrived at the hospital, the doctors quickly saw that she wasn't breathing well and wasn't responding. They started treatment immediately and inserted an intubation tube to help her breathe. They also administered multiple rounds of medication to try to speed up her heart rate, or at least keep its rhythm stable. But Rosie's heart rate remained irregular. This shocked the doctors because there were no signs of trauma or injuries on her body that could explain her critical condition. "We have a female who is healthy, but when EMS gets to the scene, she's vomiting, she's unresponsive," one emergency physician recalled. Things I would be thinking about are, did she have an aneurysm that ruptured in her brain? Does she have a large hemorrhage? Did she have a dissection of the aorta that damaged her vessels? Meanwhile, Yazid was called as soon as Rosie was taken to the emergency room. He was at home with the kids when he got the call from the hospital. He quickly drove over to Rosie's house, asked a neighbor to watch the kids, and rushed to her side. At the hospital, the doctors asked Yazid if Rosie had any medical history that could explain why she wasn't responding. But Yazid told them that Rosie was completely healthy. Tragically, after 40 to 45 minutes of intensive treatment, Rosie still wasn't responding. An hour after arriving at the hospital, her condition had not improved, and she was pronounced dead. But this small car accident was about to bring some hidden secrets to light. 2 weeks after Rosie's untimely death, the police chose to contact Yazid. They wanted to talk to him, not because they thought there was foul play, but to find out more about his version of what happened on the day of the accident. They called Yazid and politely asked if he could come down to the police station to give a voluntary statement. The detectives reassured him that it was a normal process that would only help them figure out what had happened. Their only goal was to learn more about what had happened and see if Yazid's story would lead them to any new information. She wanted to go see a movie with her sister. She was running a little late and left around 1, Yazid explained. Okay, I get that. You guys say she had an accident. Was she taking any over-the-counter meds, vitamins, or supplements? A detective asked. She was taking a vitamin occasionally, calcium, and then right before she left, she took the calcium. Just calcium? I can't see how that would relate, the detective trailed off. When did she start taking the vitamins? Another officer asked. Recently. Vitamins are safe. Do they think any of this had to do with anything? We don't know. At this point, you have somebody who's 38 years old and suddenly she dies and nobody can help her. It's kind of like, what happened? I think I have most of what I need at this point. Are the calcium pills still at your home? Would you mind if I followed you back to collect them? No, that'd be great. Not at all. Yazid didn't say anything when the inspectors went back to his house to get the vitamins and calcium supplements. When they got there, they were surprised to see a woman sitting in the kitchen. She said her name was Margarita Montañez. Yazid had hired a daily nanny to watch the kids while he was at work. What came as even more of a surprise was the news that Yazid had also hired a nighttime nanny, Michelle Molina. Some people were confused by these details, but the detectives were focused on their main goal, which was to get the calcium tablets as possible evidence. Without making too much of a fuss, the detectives quickly gathered the supplements and sent them to be tested because they thought someone might have tampered with the pills, possibly to hurt Rosie. I took in the evidence which was submitted to our laboratory, a plastic bottle filled with pills that were purported to be calcium pills. My job at this point isn't to prove that there was poison. My job is to prove that these capsules are all calcium. At first glance, the calcium pills taken from Yazid's house seemed normal. However, things weren't what they seemed. As they were about to reveal the most shocking twist, no one saw it coming. I found a bunch of calcium. However, I also found that 9 of these pills had been tampered with. This finding made the detectives suspicious, so they sent the pills to a lab for a full analysis. To their surprise, the results showed something no one had expected. The 9 pills contained cyanide. Cyanide is a poison that can kill, but it is not usually checked for in regular toxicology screenings. To find cyanide, a careful and specific study is needed. It's not something that would normally show up unless someone is specifically looking for it. Even the discovery of cyanide in Rosie's case was a very rare and horrifying event that most forensic scientists never see in their entire careers. With this shocking discovery, the investigation quickly turned into a full-on murder case. The detectives quickly got a search warrant for Rosie's car and carefully collected samples from her vomit and seat covers in the hopes of finding more clues. As expected, cyanide was found in Rosie's vomit. To learn more about the case, the coroner ordered a new toxicology screening for Rosie. When the results came back, they shocked everyone. The analysis found a shocking 9.1 milligrams of cyanide per liter of her blood, 3 times higher than what is usually considered fatal. Even more terrifying was the discovery that the calcium pills she had been taking were tainted with 600 to 800 milligrams of pure cyanide. This dose was more than enough to kill her. It was clear to the investigators that Rosie's death was not an accident, but a planned and malicious act. The police quickly came up with the theory that if the cyanide had taken effect while she was driving at 60 mph, a high-speed crash would have been inevitable, and the coroner would have ruled that as the cause of her death. However, Rosie's decision to take a back road that day and travel at a much slower speed helped them figure out the real cause of her death. With this theory in mind, the police were ready to arrest Yazid for killing Rosie. But Yazid was already one step ahead of them. Just as they were about to arrest him, they got the shocking news that he had disappeared. Once Yazid had turned over the calcium tablets, it was highly likely that once tested, they would contain cyanide. At that point in time, the focus would come down on Dr. Yazid Essa. What he chose to do next was run. The next day, March 18, 2005, investigators took the calcium pills from Yazid's house. That night, Yazid asked Rosie's sister to watch the kids overnight, and she agreed without being suspicious. However, early the next morning, March 19th, at 4 a.m., she got a voicemail from Yazid. In a calm voice, he said that his friend's brother had been in a terrible car accident in North Carolina and might not survive. He said he was going to help him. But she didn't know that this was the start of Yazid's sudden disappearance. Yazid asked Rosie's family to watch his kids over the weekend and said he'd be back on Monday. But when Monday came and went without Yazid, or even a call, Rosie's family grew very worried. They decided to call Yazid's friend to see if he knew what was going on. Maybe Yazid had to stay longer because of an emergency. But his friend's response shocked everyone. He said Yazid had never been to North Carolina and there had been no car accident involving his brother. This news shocked Rosie's family, who wondered where Yazid could be and why he had lied. As they grew more worried and realized something was very wrong, they reported Yazid missing. Days went by without any sign of him. Hearing from him, the situation became more mysterious. Why would he just leave like this, especially since the murder of his wife was still being investigated? What could have been more important to him than this? Even though everyone was worried, Dominic, Rosie's brother, wasn't sure that Yazid was just lost. He had strong doubts and thought there might be more to it than that. Determined to discover the truth, he rushed over to Yazid's house. Dominic started looking for clues. While searching through the kitchen, he saw a recently opened passport-style package on the counter. His heart sank when he realized that Yazid had not only gone missing but had also run away. He immediately informed the police about the passport envelope and asked them to question Yazid's brother and business partner, Yazid Essa, the only family member Yazid was close to. The police moved quickly and called Faz to get more information. It didn't take long for Faz to tell the police the whole truth. Yazid had actually asked his brother to help him leave the United States. He told Faz that he had to leave town because he was afraid people would find out about his sexual affairs. Interestingly, the two women Yazid was seeing were the same women he had hired as his children's daytime and nighttime nannies. Yazid had also told Faz that he was unhappy in his marriage and wanted to leave Rosie. This made investigators suspicious, but the real reason for the murder was even more disturbing. Could Yazid have killed his wife to avoid paying for a divorce and instead be with the nannies? To get Yazid out of the country, Faz asked a cousin experienced in smuggling people across borders for help. This was a quick but dangerous way for Yazid to escape his dire situation. The police knew they had to bring Yazid back to get clear answers. He traveled to Detroit, crossed the bridge to Windsor, then went from Windsor to Toronto, from Toronto to Cyprus, and from Cyprus to Beirut. Why Beirut? Because Yazid was Lebanese, and Beirut did not have an extradition treaty with the United States. There he remained, aided by a friend who provided him with connections, documents, safe houses, and a secure place to hide. If you're going to be on the run, Beirut was the perfect place to be. On April 22, 2005, the county coroner confirmed that Rosemary Essa, 38 years old, had died from acute cyanide poisoning. This led a grand jury to indict Yazid on charges of aggravated murder. However, there was a significant problem. Yazid had already fled to Lebanon, which had no extradition treaty with the U.S. This made it incredibly difficult to bring him to justice, as the legal systems of both countries did not facilitate the easy transfer of fugitives. Yazid built a new life for himself in Lebanon, knowing he had left behind his children. He likely assumed that the Depio family would step up to care for them, as they eventually did. It was bizarre how carefully he had planned his escape, executing it so efficiently and calculatingly. Once in Lebanon, Yazid reinvented himself. He changed his name to Maurice Keefe and disappeared within 3 months. He also started dating Naila Suki, a 38-year-old schoolteacher, and drastically altered his appearance. He began wearing glasses and adopted a sharp, sophisticated look to avoid being caught. Surprisingly, Yazid didn't try to hide his crime. He seemed to enjoy his new life, convinced he had gotten away with it. While the FBI and U.S. investigators pleaded for his return, Yazid was living comfortably, basking in his newfound freedom and carefully crafted new identity. He was living the playboy life, having a great time, so much so that his patron in Lebanon warned him to be quiet. Apparently, Yazid would get intoxicated at nightclubs and boast, "They say I'm a killer. Ha, I could be a killer." Yazid even created a new email address, fugitive@hotmail.com, which he frequently used. Meanwhile, back in Cleveland, the FBI and local police were monitoring his every move, waiting for the perfect opportunity to capture him if he ever left Lebanon. That chance came sooner than expected. On October 7, 2006, Yazid boarded a plane to Cyprus, triggering a chain of events the authorities had been anticipating for months. The FBI immediately contacted Cypriot authorities, warning them that Yazid was likely traveling with a fake passport. In response, Cypriot authorities agreed to detain him. Upon arrival at the Cyprus airport, Yazid looked completely different. Acting on a tip from the FBI, Cypriot police requested his fingerprints to verify his identity. Despite his fake passport, the fingerprints confirmed he was, in fact, Dr. Yazid Essa, giving the police every reason to arrest him. At the time, Yazid was charged with aggravated murder. Although no death penalty request was made, aggravated murder could carry a death sentence. This complicated extradition negotiations, as Cyprus was reluctant to extradite him if there was any possibility of a capital punishment trial. U.S. officials had to assure Cyprus that Yazid would not face the death penalty before an agreement could be reached. Even though Cyprus had an extradition treaty with the U.S., it didn't apply to death penalty cases. Yazid's lawyers fought his extradition for nearly 3 years, despite Cuyahoga County prosecutor Bill Mason confirming that the death sentence would not be pursued. Finally, in January 2009, Yazid was extradited back to Cleveland to stand trial for aggravated murder. The trial began on January 9, 2010 in Cleveland. Yazid's defense argued that the case was circumstantial, emphasizing that there was no direct physical or scientific evidence linking him to the crime. However, the prosecution countered by presenting strong evidence, including testimony from over 80 witnesses. The most damning testimony came from Yazid's own brother, Fawz. His statements made Yazid look untrustworthy and directly implicated him in Rosie's death. "When did he tell you that he gave the pill to his wife that killed her?" "Sometime after she passed away, within those 2 or 3 days. Those days blur together for me because it was a tough period. We had just lost someone we loved." "Did you ask him who could have put cyanide into those pills?" "Yes." "Did you ask him if he killed his wife?" "Yes, I asked if he was responsible for her death, and he said yes." "What did he tell you that he did?" "He said he put the cyanide in the capsules." The defense suggested that one of Yazid's mistresses, upset over his happy marriage, may have poisoned Rosie herself. However, they failed to present solid evidence to support this theory. Meanwhile, the prosecution highlighted that Yazid had even bragged about the murder while in Lebanon. After weeks of testimony and heated arguments, the jury reached a verdict on March 9, 2010. "We, the jury in this case, being duly impaneled and sworn, do find the defendant Yazid Essa guilty of aggravated murder." Yazid was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for 20 years. Rosie's parents were both relieved and heartbroken. While justice was served, they mourned the loss of their daughter, who had planned for a 3rd child, but instead left 2 children to grow up without their parents. Before we end the video, we send our deepest condolences to Rosemary Essa's family. What do you think about this case? Did Yazid kill Rosie just to live with his mistresses, or is there more to the story? If you found this case intriguing, hit the like button and subscribe for more in-depth investigations. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Stay safe and keep questioning the world around you. See you in the next video.